I just finished reading Humanocracy, and inside of this book are all the secrets about how companies and startups like Netflix were able to absolutely dethrone the mega corporations like Blockbuster. And in today's video, I'd like to outline 5 different lessons about Humanocracy that I learned from the book Humanocracy. The whole thesis of the book is that humans are creative, organizations are not. That concept is fascinating to me because I left a pretty big corporation that I would say was entangled in a bit of bureaucracy. And bureaucracy in and of itself is really not that dirty of a word, but humanocracy, this idea that human beings are to be invested in more than the systems above it, absolutely exposes the dangers and the pitfalls of it and unlocks a way forward so that no matter what company you work at or what team you're on, you can position yourself like a startup so that you can kind of conquer the world. The first lesson I learned is that the traditional hierarchy is broken. Rewind with me back to the 1890s. We didn't have a great way to organize our workforce. It wasn't well adopted, it wasn't well written about, and we just kind of didn't have as strong of a need. Fast forward to the assembly line, and all of a sudden we're starting to standardize the way we do practices. This process of just standardizing everything and kind of running things from the top down, the hierarchy, was born. In fact, the term manager, the role manager, was actually created, and it created a rift between worker and manager. Well, this system hasn't changed much despite the fact that a lot of the workforce today is not doing factory work. There's a lot of knowledge work. People are more literate. There's a lot more creativity. In the traditional hierarchy, which is great for routine work, creativity and speed suffer as a result because you have to go through approvals through some sort of thing, or you have to wait to hear what the manager wants to do, or leadership at the top in their big dark office of the building is going to come up with some strategy that everybody's going to have to play out, and it all trickles down through the many layers of bureaucratic fat. That lack of speed due to the approvals and the bureaucratic layers and the management and all this and that is actually a huge disadvantage in the marketplace because right now, things around us are changing as fast as they ever have, and today, right now, as you watch this, this is the slowest things will ever be again. The traditional hierarchy is broken if you want to be a company that succeeds at adapting to the world. They say that if the world outside is changing faster than the culture inside your company, then you're already doomed. The second lesson I learned in Humanocracy is that bureaucracy is a formidable foe. So when I say bureaucracy and I say hierarchy, they aren't always the same thing. As a company grows, it has a need for more systems to be in place. Ways to onboard people, ways to make decisions, ways to run meetings. And these systems are really important. They make up the fabric of how you operate as a company. But the risk as you grow is that people fall in love with the systems and they start protecting the systems, and all the power and the influence of the systems trickles upwards. So the hierarchy starts to centralize all the power at the top. The impact of that is that the centralized power, decision-making, control, and permissions at the tops starts to protect the status quo, which leads to things like compensation being tied to your title, or confidence and politicking being more important than merit and competency. And to change this, the fastest way to make any of this change happens to be the people who are at the top benefiting from this status quo itself. So it's not actually in their interest when they're at the top of the hierarchy to relinquish their power and move it away to a more decentralized system, which is what Humanocracy starts to explain. The lower you are on the pyramid, the more of a resource you are, the less agency you have to make decisions. And so bureaucracy as a foe is formidable because it protects itself by the way that it's organized, and the people who love it fall in love with it and benefit from it, keeping things going. The third lesson in Humanocracy is that people are more capable than the systems want to believe. This is where the book starts to really turn on its thesis that people are creative and organizations aren't. And what they kind of get to is that in that centralized hierarchy, when you're making decisions, you are limited to the quality of your decision making by the data and the information you have available to you. Nobody at the top is omnipotent. So they kind of rely on their judgment as well as whatever information they can glean from people below them to make quality decisions. If you think about the power of the people, you can draw from the wisdom of the crowd. If you set up 100 people in a room and have them all guess how many peanuts are in a jar or something like that. The average guess of them is going to be really accurate. The wisdom of the crowd, all aggregated, all thought through together, all working towards each other, can usually lead to higher quality, higher accuracy than the single opinion of someone who, even if they're an expert. When decision making is controlled and centralized at the top about things that impact everybody, you lose the power to leverage the wisdom of the crowd. The other missed opportunity lower on the hierarchy is that when you can tap into the wisdom in the brain of a lot of people or give them the agency to make decisions, they can draw on lateral thinking, other creative experiences they've had help inform the way that they operate there. You're limited only by the diversity in the people in your workforce instead of just the opinions stuck in the walls of the C-suite. Humanocracy really promotes moving authority to the expertise instead of expertise to the authority. The next lesson I learned from Humanocracy is that principles trump mechanics. Humanocracy is an outcome, not a system. Like bureaucracy, you wouldn't say that you're setting up a company to be a bureaucracy. Bureaucracy just kind of happens as a result of that centralization of power and people falling in love with the systems, loving the systems more than the business. Whereas humanocracy loves the people more than the systems. The authors talk about companies like Hire, Nucor, and the Morningstar Company as humanocratic systems. They are companies that have adopted the principles of humanocracy, believing in the people, leveraging their creativity, decentralizing decision-making, as a perfect example of what it looks like to move into that system. They open a chapter with an excellent example. If you want to become a great golfer, you don't copy the swing of Tiger Woods. What you want to copy is his mindset and his approach to the game, his values and his principles, not his mechanics and tactics. The same thing is true with organizations. In order to leverage the power of humanocracy, you can look at companies like Hire, Morningstar, and Nucor, but you don't want to copy their literal way that they do things. It's better to think about the principles that they follow, and the principles they follow are outlined really well in Humanocracy. This is the same reason that someone who wants to adopt an agile manifesto or a scrum-based team in their organization shouldn't rely exclusively on the meetings and the rituals that you do. Instead, they should study a lot more the principles of agile in the agile manifesto, because that outlines the intention of everything and it gives context and it breathes life into these rituals and these structures that you put in place. The values of humanocracy are things like autonomy, decentralization, community and networks, compensation, following, competency, and meritocracy, among many other things. But the idea is that you believe in the people more than the systems. And the last lesson from the book Humanocracy is that self-management is the future of work. If you believe what the authors are promoting about humanocracy and you start to adopt these values and principles into your organization, it doesn't matter how big you are or what market you compete in. Because one of the companies that talk a lot about is Hire. They're a $52 billion company. That's not a small company. They break their teams into networks of teams. They're not necessarily a flat organization. They're a dynamic organization. They are based on merit and trust and contracts, and the way that they operate with each other really brings in these values of self-management, self-managed teams, people who lead themselves, less decisions from the top and a lot more from within the network of people. If I boil everything down about humanocracy into a single idea, it's that when you believe in people, you can expect great things. Believing in the structure of an organization or system breathes the status quo, which A, begins to strengthen itself, but B, slows everything down and puts you at risk of being swallowed up by the next great startup. The way a company adopts humanocracy is going to depend on the fabric and the people in that company. It's a very cultural thing. But the things that I love about this idea of self-management is the entrepreneurial aspect of it. This freedom to succeed, fail, innovate. It gives you speed. It moves authority to people who have the expertise and know what's going on. And it gives you kind of this mindset of a startup, which accelerates your adoption of the future. Humanocracy isn't even super idealistic either. The authors take a lot of time in the book talking about what are the steps that you can take no matter where you are in an organizational journey to begin to bring these in? How do you fire up the grassroots movements? How do you overcome the bureaucratic pitfalls of the hierarchy? How do you avoid losing all your greatest talent because they're burnt out fighting the system when all they want to do is make an impact and do some meaningful work? That's all I have for you. If you want to check out this book, there's a link below. I highly recommend it. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.